That's the sound of a party, Matt.
I'm glad that you're wearing Mardi Gras beads for a video that's going to go live several days, if not weeks, after Mardi Gras. Hello and welcome to This Is Austin. Is Microsoft back to their nefarious ways?
Nefarious, you say?
Yeah.
Bum, bum, bum.
So Linus a couple days ago had done a video about Edge and how it's pretty predatory. And
I was surprised with that video because I knew a lot of the stuff about how it's incredibly annoying. If you're on Windows 11, you know that Edge loves to be everywhere. You know, it automatically defaults itself to not only your default browser. To get rid of it, you send just one checkbox on every other operating system in the world, and it still opens itself if you search something, right? It's incredibly annoying.
I'm not gonna dispute any of the things that he said in that video. It's absolutely right. I will play devil's advocate a little bit with that one of just we had made multiple videos of just it's time to switch away to Edge because collectively we liked using Edge more than we liked using Chrome.
I think the difference though, if you choose to use Edge, and we're going on a massive tangent immediately.
Right.
If you choose to use Edge, more power to you. What I don't like is a choice being forced down my throat, right? That's a slippery slope. I don't want to be alarmist. I don't want to be oh, this is terrible. I get it. Some of these things are just the way the world is going right now. I'm not just saying that everything, that their change is bad, blah, blah, blah. However, I think some of the stuff that Microsoft's doing is worth a conversation about what is acceptable and what we need to sort of draw a line in the sand and hold on a second. We need to chill a bit. So I think there's an interesting conversation here.
And I'll preface this video with saying I'm the outsider of this. I rarely use Windows. I don't not use Windows. I just do it so infrequently that the last time I haven't actually used Windows 11 since we did that video.
When it leaked?
Yeah, when it leaked a few months back. Because I'm on Mac all the time.
Yeah.
I'm on iPad all the time. The thing we were talking about is that you have to create a Windows account for signing up for Windows 11.
No, technically this is not new. In Windows 10, it actually did the same thing. The difference was if you were not connected to the internet, cool, whatever, you create a local account.
Right.
And while if you are someone who is building a PC and you're going to use it for 4 years and you look at the screen once, probably not the end of the world. As someone who builds 1 to 2 PCs a week, this is a lot of extra hassle, and especially if you're in IT or something, there's a lot of extra setup. There's a lot of just nonsense here,
can you
which you didn't have to do.
Me where that hassle is?
For normal circumstances, this is not a problem. If you already have a Microsoft account or you want to create one, and you are around the internet when you are building or activating a computer, right? Which is, to be fair, probably 98% of people's experience. However, if you are setting up lots of PCs, if I'm trying to build a PC in the middle of the desert for some video and I don't have an internet connection or something, before it was fine and I could just deal with it later and create a local account or whatever.
Yeah.
Now I have to log into my Microsoft account. Now, to be fair, it is not like Windows is always online. Obviously Microsoft has this huge reputation after the Xbox One debacle of the console always that needed to be online, et cetera, and they pretty quickly backtracked. So, and I mean, if you think about the way that pretty much everything in our lives go, right? You need to be connected to the internet. If you have a device that is offline, it's almost more of a novelty at this point. You just got to think about some of the STEM player, right? Where it's more of a novelty experience versus something that you're going to want to use on a regular basis. But I think the more interesting conversation here is at what point is always online just accepted? Because that is the case for most people. And I from a company's perspective, I might not agree with it, but I understand, there's huge incentive for Microsoft using Windows to drive you, the user, to use all kinds of Microsoft products. How many times they ask you to activate Office and OneDrive and Game Pass and use Teams, and they want to push you toward their services. And fair enough, right? I mean, so does Apple, so does Google. I mean, that's fair.
That's one of the things I'm really glad that Linus did include in his video of just Microsoft is being super predatory about this, but they're also doing the exact same thing that Google's trying to do.
Yeah.
They're these companies are trying to make money, and this is the way to do it. Is you don't make billions and trillions of dollars by just being okay. I mean, the always on conversation is, I feel a little gray. Because there's certain things that it makes sense to be always on, but then there's other things that's really annoying for it to be always on. To me, consoles always on is annoying for my use case scenario. It's kind of a meme at this point, but every time you go to I got 5 minutes to play a game, I go to log in, and now you need to download an update.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 is a security update to prevent some sort of hacking.
Yeah.
Well, if you didn't require to be always online for different things, you wouldn't need that update.
At this point, a lot of games that ship on discs are next to useless because they have half the content on the disk, and you need to do a 50 gigabyte download the second you try to. Like, we live in a different world now. We're not going to be the old curmudgeons complaining about back in the old days, my floppy disks loaded so much faster. Like, I get it. But I just think we should think a little bit about how far this should go and how much we should try to draw that line in the sand, right? So for me, this is almost more of a precedent thing, right? I think since Windows 7 and 8, and really when it started with Windows 10, Microsoft has gotten a lot more aggressive about how they use Windows, right? I think before, Windows was the product. You bought your Windows license or it came with your PC. Congratulations, Microsoft made their money. Now, in my opinion, Microsoft almost treats Windows like, here's the Trojan horse to get you to use more Microsoft products. It's trying to hoover up not only just your data from Edge it wants to share, it's like, oh, hey, we're gonna go import data from your other browsers if you ignore this, if you just already checked checkbox. We're just gonna just take that data and we'll keep good hands on it. But it's like, you can see that they've been doing this. They've been trying to add more and more features.
That's
that
the whole
need
reason
to be
that they're trying to go to the always on.
Yeah.
Is because then they can collect more data on you. You know, like we're kind of in this point with internet as a society of just like all these cool things that require always on to work.
Yeah.
You know, virtual assistants. I know like most people immediately disable Cortana, but like Windows
people
at
use
this point,
MSN because it's the default like homepage on Edge because they just press the internet button and they go, what's on the internet today? Click.
But there's plenty of like core features nowadays that require the always on. Yeah. So like, you know, we as a society kind of have to go and say, okay, well, here's some of the trade-offs. If we want to have these super convenient things, we have to be always connected in order for that to work. But now we have to kind of fight back of just like, you know, we're accepting that we're always on and that we're always connected to your servers, but at what point is it too much of you controlling what?
Yes.
And that it's a tough conversation. Here's a good example of just, this is not Windows, it's whatever, but like it's Phillips Hue. I have allowed Phillips Hue to track me because every time I leave the house or like arrive back home, all my lights are cued. That's a great feature. You know what? It saved me a lot of money in electricity.
Sure.
And like as soon as I started doing that, I noticed like a massive drop in my electricity bill. And to me, I'm like, this is worth it to me. But now I'm letting Philips Hue track my every movement.
Of course.
And so like you gotta kind of have this trade-off.
This by itself, if we ignore all the context around the situation, we just look at Microsoft saying, hey, you know what? When you activate your Windows 11 license, when you first turn it on, you need to connect to the internet. That by itself is an annoyance, but it's fine-ish for me. My concern is the bigger picture. I see what Microsoft has been doing recently over the last 5-6 years of putting more and more data logging and being more pushy with these like updates and pushing more Microsoft stuff. And I don't like the trajectory that we're seeing. And I also feel just sort of personally that like, I generally speaking like Microsoft. I feel like they generally do a pretty good job and they have a great track record, especially in the gaming space, right? I mean, obviously over the last few years, we've been very, very sort of praiseworthy of them.
I said that I trust Microsoft the most. We weren't talking about data in that context, but it was, I trust them with something like Game Pass the most to keep it at like a roughly the same price point because they have all these other revenue streams, one of them being collecting your data.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I think trust in a company is always tricky. I think that it's a slippery slope. I think that things change. I just think it's easy to lose the perspective on things. And I think it's worth a conversation. I think it's worth a thought as far as how much of this is fine and totally normal and practical, and how much of what Microsoft and everyone else in the industry, but I'm just singling out Microsoft because that's kind of the topic here with Windows 11, how much of this should we be like, sure, I'm totally okay with? Because, I mean, there have been other problems with Windows 11. I generally think Windows 11 is a fairly nice update. It looks nice and blah, blah, blah. But you look at how the lack of compatibility with a lot of older hardware and how Microsoft pretty consistently have trying to push out the older school hardware because they don't want to deal with it, which, I mean, from a company perspective, I wouldn't want to support 500 billion PC options and graphics cards and stuff that date back to Core 2 Duos or whatever.
I think that's just like important to bring up of just like, it's not so cut and dry with a lot of people think it is. Microsoft doesn't gain anything from saying you need to buy a new CPU other than they no longer have to support 10,000 other ones. Like, they're not making money by you going to buy another CPU. They're saving money.
Well, they're only making money if they're telling you to go buy an entire new system with a fresh copy of Windows. That's where they make their money.
Okay, that's a little that there's your vertical integration, and there's big big icky,
according to some stats, I mean, so recently there was a hardware survey of 10 million devices, and only 45% of them actually were able to work with Windows 11 with the full compatibility, which means that over half of those systems running Windows 10 were not capable. At least that is an enormous amount of systems. You think about Windows 10 only being supported really for a few more years. Like, I think we've given Microsoft a bit of a pass recently, but some of the stuff that's been going on that's kind of, for me, I've been a little hand wavy. Like, oh, it's fine. I'm starting to kind of second guess that. Like, you know what? This is starting to add up a little bit. I'm not so sure I'm super comfortable with this.
It's one of those things of like, what's the alternatives of, Well,
the alternative, I don't think, is moving to other platforms. I think the alternative is making your voice heard, right? I think if you can give Microsoft anything, I think that they are relatively open to criticism and feedback. I think if a bunch of people, like everyone complained about Windows 11 not being supported on older hardware, and they did kind of capitulate. They did allow you, even though it's a little bit of a hack around. But that is at least progress that they made. And I think that if people make their voices heard, that I do think companies such as Microsoft will listen and at least incorporate the feedback. They may not listen, but for all we know, it's not going to hurt anything.
But you know what says is the loudest? Someone switching over. Like if they see like a drop off in Windows user, the adage is always relevant. If you're not paying for it, you're the product. Let us know in the comments what you think. Is Windows going too far? Is Windows not going too far enough? Is Google
not
better?
Going
is
too
Apple
far
better?
Enough?
I don't know.
I don't know if I've ever not gone too far enough.
Just let us know in the comments why we should all be switching to Linux, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Really, please don't.